Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new PennyWise podcast from Lee Enterprises. I'm your host, Teri Barr. Today, we are going to dive into some things you may not want to think about right now, but the end of the year is really coming fast. Fortunate to have with us today Kimberly Palmer. Kimberly is a credit card as well as a personal finance expert with NerdWallet. And again, Kimberly, we are so lucky to have you with us today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here talking with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I guess we're going to try to put together a to-do list for everyone's consideration as we start looking toward the end of 2021. Hard to believe, but why is this timing so good when we're looking at, this time of the year to get it together?
Well, I think fall is really such a good time to both look back on what's happened the previous year, any financial changes you've gone through, and then also to look forward to next year because we're only a few months away from the beginning of the new year. It's a good time to refresh, to consider any big changes you want to make or small changes you want to make. And then also, we are approaching some end of year deadlines. December 31st is a financial deadline for a handful of things. And so it's just a good time to make sure we have a few months to make some changes. And so let's just get it all done before that deadline.
Okay. And you put together an incredible list of tips. Nothing really too hard here, but just really great reminders. So here's one of the top ones that you had. Consider ramping up your short-term savings. Why could that be so important right now?
Well, ramping up savings is always a good idea, but right now it is more important than because during the pandemic, we have a lot of government benefits that came into effect. And so, for example, some of us are getting some benefits like a pause on federal student loans being due, the advanced child tax credit that goes through December. The issue is that for a lot of these benefits, they are ending at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. So for example, those student loan payments, they'll be unpaused in January. And so it's a really good idea to think ahead. How will that impact me? Do I need to have some extra savings on hand? Because the worst case scenario is when it takes you by surprise, you can't make those payments, and then that can be very stressful. So it's a really great idea, right now, just to set aside some money so you have a cushion because those benefits are expiring.
Okay. And we mentioned in particular savings. Do you think that really is like the best place to put something, especially if you think all of a sudden it's going to be January, February, and then you need that money?
I do. I think it's such a good idea to have money where you can easily access it. So it could be a checking account, but a savings account, a high yield savings account is really a great idea because then the money is earning some interest. We're in a low interest environment, so it's not going to be a lot of interest, but still you can earn a little bit. So it's not just sitting there doing nothing. And you know that you can access it if you need it.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, here's a tough one. The anticipation. I think we all anticipate any possible tax changes, but do we often think about it maybe even too late sometimes? Why should we think about any tax changes that could happen? Why should we start thinking about that right now?
Well, basically, a lot of people went through some significant changes in the last year that will impact their tax situation. That includes things like moving to a different state, taking a new job, getting married, getting divorced, any kind of change in your family. And all of that, you don't want it to take you by surprise when you file your taxes and you end up owing a lot more than you expected. That's kind of a worst case scenario we want to avoid. So planning ahead and just understanding how any of those changes that you went through in the past year, how does that impact your tax situation? Will you owe more? Because if you will owe more, you want to start putting money aside for that now too, so you don't suddenly have to pay a huge chunk in April.
Yeah, and you're not ready for it. Is it also a good time, meaning right now, to, if you want to talk to a tax expert of sorts, maybe they're not as busy as they are once they get into the new year?
It is really the perfect time to get your
Okay.
tax questions answered because if you wait until the new year's January, February through up until April, tax professionals are just jammed. They're overwhelmed and they might not answer your email or your phone call as quickly as you'd like or as thoroughly as you like. So really now is a great time to get those questions answered.
Okay, so we're on this now. Now is the time to
Now.
do these things. This is terrific. What about the idea of actually taking a moment to sit down and reflect on what you saved or spent in the last year during 2021. Again, why right now?
Well, this is actually my favorite tip because I think it can shed so much light on any changes or tweaks we want to make. And again, this year, it's more important than ever because we have gone through so many changes. In a lot of cases, our
Mhm.
saving, our lifestyle, and how we save, how we spend has totally been changed by the pandemic. Such a
Yeah.
do a check-in and see, are things really reflecting where I want my money to be going? If you have created a budget for yourself, do you need to make any changes, any tweaks? So even doing something like spending a half an hour pulling up your credit card statements over the last few months or debit card, whatever you use for your everyday expenses, and just take a look at where that money is going. Are there any leaks that you can put an end to, put a stop to? Maybe you sign up for some subscriptions over the last year that you really don't need anymore or that you can cancel. And so it's a great check in and see where can I get some extra savings.
Absolutely. And I think when we think about this kind of thing, and you said even, just a half an hour to mark that off on your own schedule and say, I'm going to do this. It can be so difficult, but yet it's so important. And it sounds like what you're saying is just give yourself this time to do it.
I think so. And I think
Yeah.
scheduling it can really make sure that it happens because this is the kind of stuff that's just so easy to procrastinate. And so if
Mhm.
we can put it on our calendar and try to make it as enjoyable as possible, maybe you put your favorite music on, whatever it is, or maybe you even coordinate with your partner if you have one and you sit down together to attack these things together. If you can make it enjoyable and pleasant, then it's easier to not continue to put it
Mhm.
off. But I think just putting it on your calendar, setting aside that time, you're doing it for yourself. You'll probably feel better afterward, even if it's not the most enjoyable task, but it's something we should all get done.
And I think we've learned a lot about ourselves in the last year that putting that time to do whatever it is, but in this particular case, looking at finances, it's so important. Put it on the calendar and make sure you follow through for yourself.
I think so.
Yeah, great, great tip there. How about topping off retirement contributions at this time of year? I know we hear about this a lot, but do people really do it?
Well, it is something that can be hard to do, and you might not have the flexibility this year, but if you can, it is such a good idea to ramp up your retirement contributions. The deadline, if you have a 401k to make contributions, is December 31st. So we
Okay.
really only have a couple months to make those final adjustments before the end of the year. The annual limit for 401ks is $19,500. So it's worth just pulling up your retirement account, check in, see where you are for the year, and see if you can squeeze a little bit more into that account before the deadline comes up.
That's great. I mean, that's just a simple tip right there. And again, just take the time to do it. Oh my gosh. Kimberly, thank you for that one. We've got one more. And this, I appreciate this because I don't know how often we not only look behind, but look ahead when it comes to our finances and try to get ready for a new year. So, what do you suggest we do here when we're trying to think about maybe 2022 and what we want to do in that new year?
Well, I think that so many of us have really reflected and had some ideas for big
Mhm.
changes as a result of the pandemic. It's changed so much. Some people want to totally change their job or maybe even change where they live. And so it's such a good time now to think ahead. What big changes, any, do you want to make next year? Because you can
Mhm.
start planting those seeds. If it is getting a new job or changing fields, maybe it's time to update your resume and put out some feelers, apply for some new jobs. So you can start researching the new city you want to live in. Whatever it is, now is a great time to start taking those small steps to make sure happen next year.
And it's so funny. Every single tip you gave, really one at a time is pretty simple. Put them all together. You'll feel so good. And the bottom line of every single one still is taking charge of your own finances, isn't it?
It is. It's putting in that time and effort to take care of yourself. I mean, what could be better? Fall is my favorite time of year, and I just think it's such a good time to just look at our money and make those adjustments.
Yeah, I agree. So, what do you say? Bottom line, people have heard all of these terrific tips. What should we be thinking about as we move forward toward the end of the year?
I think really the big takeaway is to put some effort into getting organized and into taking some of these small steps that can really have big changes on your overall finances. So even if you just set aside maybe an hour on an upcoming weekend to go through those credit card statements, check into your retirement account, make some small changes, some small check-ins, and it can really have a big positive impact.
Oh, no kidding. There it is. The tips to help us get ready for next year and to get through this year. Kimberly Palmer, she is a personal finance expert, credit card expert with NerdWallet. Thank you. You made this sound really easy. Now we just got to tackle it and we can
We just
do
have
it.
to implement it. Yeah, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
And anytime you want to listen to a PennyWise podcast, you will find PennyWise wherever you enjoy listening to your podcast. We're so glad you do that. And thanks again for joining us today. Kimberly, as always, so great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day.